Now, I've been doing a lot of videos about Tall Tales in which I introduce it and the characters and some of the setting and stuff like that, and I'm going to continue doing that, but I also want to start mixing in videos about other projects that I'm working on, other books that I have going on, or other series that I'm poking at or whatever. So that's what I'm doing here. And I'm going to introduce this one in two parts. Today, this post is going to be about the inspiration and the source for the story, where the story actually came from. Next time I do a video on this story, it'll be the actual plot, kind of introducing the book itself. And then after that, I'll start mixing in various character introductions and setting intros and stuff like that as I go along, just like I've been doing with Tall Tales. Now, one thing to know about me is that I grew up in the Rust Belt. Where I grew up was actually a steel city that was actively dying as the industry left while I was growing up there. I was born in 1982, and so the period of time when the steel mills were leaving and the population was declining and everything was kind of falling apart was my childhood. It extended all the way through into the early 2000s, and they're still kind of in a recession compared to the rest of the country even today. So this has been my entire life has been like that. And I don't think that people from outside of the region realize just how apocalyptic that really was and how post-apocalyptic it felt like to grow up there sometimes. Because it's not like a store closed and then the people who work there were looking for new jobs and everything was still kind of running fine. You have to understand that our world ended. The steel mills weren't just one other job in the area. They were the foundation of our economy and lifestyle in that region. Everything that was there was either part of the steel mill process or was built to support that industry being there. And so when that left, when that went, everything collapsed because the entire ground floor was taken out of the economy. We had to rebuild from scratch. We had to rebuild with no money because no one was investing in the area. We didn't have much outside help. We didn't have a lot going on to rebuild from, and we didn't have a good idea on where to go. And in fact, I grew up in a town where the politicians were promising to bring back the steel mills despite having no means to do that. And because we were so fixated on getting that to happen, we didn't explore other options, and we just fell further and further, unlike places like Pittsburgh, which shifted to focusing on banking and arts and were able to reinvent themselves. My hometown is only just now starting to make strides in that direction. And this has made me acutely aware of how an influential person making big promises based on some glorified past can draw massive amounts of support while failing to deliver anything worth having. But I had to grow up surrounded by empty steel mills and abandoned houses with no good future on the horizon, and that has shaped a lot of who I am. And it also makes that my nostalgia for my hometown, for my childhood, is mixed with this amount of sadness and this sense of loss. Now, my grandma died a few years ago, and while I was in town for the funeral, I was dwelling on this loss, of course, because that's what's going on. And this was mixed with this kind of general air of loss that I was experiencing just from being there, just feeling what it was like to be there again and to have these memories and kind of dwelling on that. And while that was happening, Younger by the Mountain Goats.
Storm right down that hill. If I don't know, one will follow me right through the chaos. This whole house is doomed. Even the big parts get consumed. Prepare a grave for Menelaus.
Now, I don't know if that's what he intended, but when I listen to the song, I get very D&D vibes from it. And there's certain elements in it that cause that. A couple of them, admittedly, are lyrics that I heard wrong initially, but now that I envision it that way, I just keep envisioning it that way. But my thoughts were being shifted into a fantasy direction because of this. And I remembered that in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, the Age of Magic is ending. Like, they can't stop that. They don't stop that. They save the world for future generations. They are able to stop the march of Sauron. They're able to fix that. But the elves are still gone. The magic is still leaving. The Shire is still scoured. The world that they look back on is ended. And I realized that growing up in the wake of that must have felt very much like growing up in my hometown, where the very foundation of your world has gone and you're left with the remains of it slowly decaying around you. And I decided in that moment that I wanted to write a story about that sensation, about the hopes and the desires and the fears that that invokes and the decisions that you make based on that. I wanted to write a story that conveyed that, and that story is called Glory Days. Glory Days is a standalone novel, and I'm really looking forward to introducing it to you as the weeks go on. Thank you.